Good evening. We'll call to order the meeting of the Edina Planning Commission, the regular meeting scheduled for Wednesday, April 27th, 2011. Jackie, would you call the roll, please?
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the Planning Commission meeting of March 23. Do we have any comments on the minutes or concerns about the minutes or corrections or anything like that? If not, can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good. The minutes are approved. Looking at the agenda, I see that the second item is new business, but I do have, Carrie, if I might, I've got a couple old business. Is it okay to take old business right now?
We can, sure.
All right. Two items on old business. One, I checked the Minnesota legislature website today, and House File 52 was adopted by the House of Representatives, and it apparently was adopted by the Senate today. And House File 52 is the law which amends the variance rules, which is designed to overturn the famous or infamous Krummenacher decision. So it does appear that soon we will be back in the variance granting business. So that was, for all of those in the public that wondered what in the world the city was doing, standing on its head worrying about variances, we're getting close to being back to normal on that. The second item of old business that I wanted to mention was that at the last meeting we had a presentation by representatives of the Energy Environment Commission on work they're doing concerning, I want to get the name right, small wind and solar renewable energy systems. The City of Edina does have an ordinance that deals with that, but the Energy and Environment Commission is concerned, do we have to update the ordinance or should we do anything with the ordinance? And we had a presentation by Suri Iyer, and I think it's William Speaks last meeting. In the meantime, I had asked for volunteers, and Commissioners Platter and Potts volunteered to serve on a subcommittee to work with the representatives of the Energy and Environment Commission. And I did appoint a subcommittee of those two commissioners to work with that group. The intent being that the subcommittee would work together, consider the matter, take a look at the current ordinances, determine whether or not the City of Edina should do anything with its ordinances, and make a report back to the Energy Environment Commission and the Planning Commission. And if changes were recommended, we would then consider those changes, and if adopted, we would pass those on to the City Council. So I appreciate the willingness of Commissioners Platter and Potts to volunteer to do that for us, and I hope there are other opportunities coming up that we can use members of the Planning Commission on subcommittees to study these kinds of issues. I think it's a good way to get people involved. So, any other old business that anybody wants to bring up, as long as we're on old business? Okay. Moving on to new business. The first item is preliminary and final rezoning, Greenwood Design Build LLC, 5213 Malibu Drive. Carrie?
Thank you, Chair Grable, members of the Commission. This property, or the request is by Greenwood Design Build for rezoning of 5213 Malibu Drive from R2, which is our zoning district that allows duplexes to R1, our single-family home district. Property is located on the west side of the city, again on Malibu Drive. The existing lot is vacant, has not been built on since it was platted. The map on the screen here indicates, here's the property right here. The properties in black are the R2 zoning districts. Properties in white are R1. The properties here in blue just to the north are single-family homes, but zoned Planned Residential District 1. Those are single-family homes. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-family home on the property, similar to the house that you see on the screen. It would conform to all of our minimum setback and height requirements. What's unique to this property is that there are existing sanitary sewer, existing water lines, and storm sewer that runs through this property. When this property was platted, easements weren't established over those utilities. So with this, the applicant is proposing to dedicate those easements. It would be a 25-foot easement along the north lot line and a 10-foot easement along the south lot line. The utilities that run through there may be one of the reasons this property has not been built on with the duplex, which limits the buildable area on the site. Primary issue for us to consider tonight is the proposed rezoning from R2 to R1 reasonable for this site? Staff believes that it is, essentially for 4 reasons. First, the proposed home would fit the character of the neighborhood. As I pointed out earlier, there are a scattering of single-family homes in this area, both to the north and to the east, duplexes to the south. This is a look at the existing duplex that's directly south of the property, duplex directly north. Second, the city did, back in 1991, approve a similar rezoning from R2 to R1, that the 2 properties that are indicated on the map, just north of the site on Malibu Drive. Third, allowing single-family homes within a 2-family zoning district is not uncommon. Staff did a survey of cities. It's included in your packet this evening, and as indicated, 12 of the 15 cities surveyed allow single-family homes in their R2 equivalent zoning districts. The cities of Eagan, Hopkins, and Eden Prairie were the 3 cities that do not. If the city wishes to, if the Planning Commission feels that single-family homes are appropriate in an R2 zone, we could make that recommendation to the City Council. The city has had a practice in our current zoning ordinance of allowing lesser uses to carry through to more intense zoning districts. As an example, all of the uses in our PCD1 zoning district are less intense commercial districts, carry through to our PCD2 and 3 zoning districts. Also, with our planned office districts, those uses carry over to planned industrial district. Lastly, the comprehensive plan. This property is designated as LDA, low density attached residential, and it does indicate in the plan that within that area, single-family homes may be included. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the request. We find that the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We've done similar rezonings on this block, and the approval would be conditioned, subject to the conditions that are outlined in your staff report. I can turn it over to the commission for questions.
Very good, thank you. Are there questions of staff?
Carrie, can you just review for us what the, I'm curious about the bulk regulations in the R2. You know, if we explored the notion that you mentioned in your memorandum about just changing the R2 zoning language to permit single-family use in the R2, would that change the kind of built form regulations, setback, lot area, height, minimum frontage, et cetera?
We could approach that a couple of ways. The way I would see it is if we make that recommendation, the council would then refer it back to the Planning Commission to study specific regulations. A couple of options. We could require R1 standards to apply to the R2 district, or we could apply the R2 standards also, have those same setbacks as would be allowed in an R2 district. But we could look at those regulations.
So, I mean, as we sit here, we just don't have those handy for us, how the bulk regulations compare between R1 and R2?
I've got my zoning ordinance. We can,
Okay.
when I sit down, we can go through that.
Okay.
Just to be clear, the expanded depth of easement on the north side of the lot, is that because you would need to be about 10 feet in from where the current location of the water line is?
Right. We need to provide enough room in case there's some maintenance issues with the existing lines, that a crew can get in there and do their work to repair those lines. 25 feet was found to be enough room by our engineering department.
Other questions for staff? Carrie, I have one question. And in the packet are drawings of the proposed, showing the setbacks and a schematic of the lot. But on the drawing where it says proposed house, in that drawing it says example house don't use to survey. What is that saying? And do we have to be concerned about that if we allow this?
I don't believe so. When they go to build this house and apply for a building permit, they would need to provide a formal survey with the specific house that's to be built shown on that survey. This is an example of the house that you see on the survey, but it's not going to serve as the survey that's required as part of the building permit.
Carrie, I was just thinking about all of the work we've done in the past on affordable housing. And I mean, we have plenty of two-family properties that are not anywhere near affordable housing, so I'm not trying to make generalities, but potentially there might be a higher chance of having affordable housing in the duplex mode. Are we potentially hurting any goals we've set in that regard? If we allow, and I'm not so much even thinking about this single act, but if we were to take the recommendation one step further and just have a blanket, ordinance that says you can do the single family without getting a variance, maybe they would have that unintended consequence.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. We all know how valuable lots are in Edina. That may be an opportunity for duplexes to become available for single-family homes, that we see speculative builders coming in, purchasing these duplexes, and then putting up large single-family homes. So that certainly could be a consequence of changing the code in that regard.
And that might lend itself to it, rather than just sort of make a blanket recommendation to the council to change that maybe that's a discussion we would want to have as a planning commission on a different night, but
Right.
Just something to think about.
Other comments for staff, questions for staff?
Mr. Chair,
Who is that?
whoever wants to go first.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Fisher's comments, given the fact that the comprehensive plan already states apparently that single-family detached dwellings are an allowed use, how much flexibility do we have in that regard? I'm almost inclined to think that we have an obligation to bring the ordinance into compliance or conformity with the comp plan.
Well, it does say that they may be allowed within that area. It doesn't specify that it has to be. An example would be that that area that we saw that was highlighted in blue, the PRD1 zoning district. Those are single-family homes. That area is also guided as this low-density attached designation.
Maybe I'm misreading the staff report, but the way it's worded in here, it says that single-family detached dwellings are an allowed use in areas guided low-density attached residential. So is there discretion? Or is the report just not tracking the language?
The specific wording in the comprehensive plan states that within that LDA, low-density attached residential areas, it may include single-family detached dwellings.
Okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kerry, I have a question about the compliance table and the front setback. And can you just refresh my memory on how we establish the front setback? Is it the average of the two adjacent lots, or is it a line drawn between the nearest corners of the homes, or an average of the homes along the same block within a certain distance?
Yeah, excellent question, because we went back and forth on that as part of the rewriting of that zoning ordinance. It's the average of the two on either side.
Thank you. Is the proponent here? Would they care to make any? Yes, please come to the podium and introduce yourself.
My name is Linda Deckus, and I'm with Miles Realty. I'm here on behalf of Greenwood Design Build. And just wanted to comment that the home that we're planning on putting in this lot is a beautiful two-story, as you see here. It actually has some similarities to some of the other homes in the neighborhood. In fact, two houses to the left of that property is a home that has a similar front style. And we just think it'll be a nice improvement for the neighborhood.
Does anyone have any questions of the proponent? Yes, ma'am. Would you care to speak? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Dawn McClelland, and I'm at 5211 Malibu Drive. And I don't know a lot about this. I just saw the sign. And so I haven't reviewed the plans or know how it would affect my property. But I had a question about that. Am I able to see those as the rezoning, or if there's different variances, how does that affect anything with my property line? What is the structure of the home that will be built? Will it fit in? I just have some general questions, and I have it.
Okay. Would you care to comment on those?
Like I had mentioned before, the property is similar to other homes in the location. It's going to be a quality construction built by Greenwood Design Build. We will follow all of the building code requirements. We will apply for the building permit just as any other home being constructed in that area would be, and follow all the guidelines of the city and the codes.
Is there a way to see the plans, or just different things so we can talk about view of the pond? I mean, different things that just affect the neighbors around.
The plan was up on that. This is a preliminary plan. We're almost to completion with the plan. And as you see, it has the gable roofs, and it will have the LP Smart side on the front of the home. There will be stone. There will be shakes, LP Smart side shakes, and all high-quality building materials.
And the height of the homes will be fairly similar?
Correct. And the city has requirements for those.
Okay.
And so we will make sure that we have all of the, everything will be in accordance to what the city.
And the space between house to house, do we know how many feet that is?
The proposal will be that it meets the various setback requirements for the lot, so it won't encroach upon those setbacks.
So currently, this is the easement on this side of the property.
Okay.
Is 25.7, and on this side is 10.2. Okay. And this is the location of the existing homes to either side.
Okay. So far. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Carrie, that raises an interesting point. This is a rezoning. What kind of notices were used in this case?
Notices went out to All properties within 1,000 feet.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment on this proposal before we bring this back, discussion up to the, excuse me, to the commission? Okay, comments from the commission?
Chair Grable, I don't have any comments, but I'm not hearing any others, so is it okay, would you entertain a motion?
I think Mr. Carpenter had it.
Oh, he does have one, okay.
I was basically going to say the same thing, so I'll defer to.
All right, do we have a motion to put on the table?
Yes, I would make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they approve the preliminary and final rezoning from R2, two-dwelling unit, to an R1, single-dwelling unit, subject to the findings that this proposal is consistent with our comprehensive plan, that we have approved similar rezoning requests in the past in this immediate area, and that that it be subject to the condition that the new single-family home meets all setbacks, height requirements, and other such rules, and that prior to issuance of the building permit, the drainage utility easement must be filed with Hennepin County. And at this time, I'm not going to include in the motion that we recommend to the council that we change this. I personally think we'd be better off having that discussion in our zoning ordinance committee work.
Is there a second to the motion? Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this request, subject to the findings and with the conditions that are set forth in the staff report. This does not deal with the issue of the rezoning, amending the zoning ordinance to allow the lesser use. So is there further discussion on the motion? Commissioner Forrest.
I'm also concerned about the effect of this, or this acting as a precedent going forward, since that was one of the findings of staff supporting this option was the fact that this had been done before in 1991 on this street. I don't object to the actual project, but I'm concerned about long-term effect on the diversity of housing stock and with the potential speculation that could result. I'm also looking at this and thinking that the city, the reasons for supporting it were based on things that, well, it had been done once in the past and that other cities allow it in their ordinances, so maybe we should too. So I get a little bit defensive about the code when I know that residents are relying on the code when they, they should be able to trust its effect on their property. So it just seems a little haphazard. It's one property out of a neighborhood, and yet the project itself seems very reasonable. So those are my concerns.
Other comments?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Staunton?
I have similar concerns. When you look at the 1991 changes, they are on the edge of a district that was zoned R2. What I'm a little distressed about is this is a property, a single property within the middle of an entire area that's zoned R2. I don't have any objection to building a single-family house there. I think it sounds like a good idea. It looks like a good plan to do it. But it makes me wonder whether the better way to do that is to just allow single-family within R2. But I'm mindful of Commissioner Fisher's point. I don't want to have an unintended consequence with that. So the only thing that's just got me a little concerned is that it's right in the middle. It's a single property in the middle of a larger area that we're now going to basically rezone to R1. So it'll have a checkerboard look when we look at the zoning map from here. And I don't want to derail the project. But I also think that's not really consistent with the way we're normally doing things in the zoning code.
Other discussion from the commission? Commissioner Carpenter.
I wonder if we could, if Mr. T could possibly give us another brief presentation on which of these homes are single-family, which ones are duplex, so we just have a little bit clearer picture of what we're talking about.
Certainly, Carrie.
That are indicated in black along here. Maybe if you could zoom in a little closer. These are all duplexes in black. So there's one duplex to the north, and then the homes to the north here in white, those are single-family homes. The homes over here in blue are single-family homes as well. And then the two properties that were rezoned from R2 to R1, so those are single-family homes also.
So are all the existing structures that are to the south of the property in question, are those all duplexes?
Those are duplexes, right.
Question? Are all the other lots built other than this one?
They are.
Okay.
Carrie, there are vacant lots immediately behind these, correct? I mean, it looked like it from the aerial
To
photo.
the east, yes.
Right.
Yeah, the single-family.
So there's certainly single-family home opportunities right there. I guess even though I made the motion and was reading off of this, in my mind, I was thinking, I mean, why can't you build a single-family home in an R2 district without changing the zoning on that particular lot? Because I agree, actually, it'll look funny coming back and seeing one lot zoned differently. I mean, the comp plan is basically suggesting you can do it, but are you saying you can't do it under our ordinance?
Correct. The only listing of permitted uses in the R2 district are two-family dwelling units. So single-family is not listed as a permitted use.
So then in some ways, you'd be better off literally coming back to the council with a recommendation to change our ordinance that allows, in essence, underbuilding in an R2. And then you could maintain an R2 district, so it has it's kind of a consistent area that we're saying this is where we want our R2 opportunities, but you might say you're not obligated to build R2. I mean, that might be another way to come at it.
Correct.
But that would take longer, I'm assuming.
It would. Another, as we were discussing this here, another finding that could be made if you're inclined to stick with the recommendation that would set this lot apart from others is the fact that with the significant utility lines that run through there really limit the buildability for a duplex on that site. I would have to think that's one of the reasons this site has remained vacant all these years.
That would be a very unique feature and kind of a way to set it apart.
Right. Would Commissioner Staunton and then Commissioner Carpenter?
Carrie, just, we talked about it taking longer. I mean, really, the only change we'd have to make is to make single-family homes or dwellings of permitted use within the R2.
That's correct.
So it's either change this to an R1 on the zoning map, or change the R2 zone to permit single-family dwellings in the R2 zone.
Correct.
And Commissioner Fisher had raised the issue about potential impact on kind of affordable housing and affordable housing stock. Can you kind of flesh that out for me? I'm not quite sure I understand how that concern plays out.
Well, I'm not sure either in this particular location. I don't think, at some time, back when we were working on the comp plan, there was this idea of is there a numeric goal by a certain time that we're trying to achieve with affordable housing? And you're either going to achieve them at the time we talked about, we're really not going to accomplish it on single-family lots. It's just very unlikely. So it's probably going to happen in multifamily, 20 units at a time or something if big projects are done. We never really talked about at sort of that R2 level, is there potential for it to happen there? And I don't believe there were ever specific discussions on that. So the more I think about it, the more I don't think it's really part of that grand scheme. You weren't counting, X amount of affordable units over the next 20 years are going to come from these zoning districts.
Because, I agree with you in this area. I guess what I just don't know is kind of across the city, how many other R2 zoning districts there are and what impact that might have, et cetera. And that would be the impact we could potentially have by changing the zoning code.
Correct.
And Carrie, could you clarify just how long this property has been vacant? It's obviously unimproved right now.
Yeah, I don't know when this was platted. This is part of the Parkwood Knolls addition. Was with, as part of this was one of the last subdivisions in town. It was platted quite a number of years ago and going to be done in phases as development occurred. The last phase of that development was, the final plat was just approved, 2-3 years ago. But I don't know the exact date. I believe it's within the last 20 years, though.
I'm just trying to gauge from the standpoint of what's reasonable here, or concerns about a checkerboard look. Right now we have a checkerboard in the sense of a vacant lot as opposed to an improved lot. And it seems to me if the longer it's been vacant and unimproved, the more likely it seems to me that this is a better alternative to any other option that might be out there. So from that perspective, I'm inclined to think that there's some reasonableness to approving this.
The dimensions of what's remaining on the lot, less the easements, is it possible to build a double dwelling on that lot versus difficult?
It's possible. You might end up with more house going toward the rear lot line rather than a wider duplex that you traditionally see. But it's possible.
And the house to the north seems to be rather close to the lot line anyway, so it seems like it's better to have the healthy distance on that side of the property. I think, too, I would want to comment on what Commissioner Staunton said. I am concerned somewhat about the diversity of housing stock being affected by kind of willy-nilly rezoning. But neighborhoods do evolve over time as well, so maybe that's what will happen in this neighborhood. But I know that currently throughout town, there's been kind of an uproar because the character of neighborhoods have been changed by tear downs and building bigger homes or in them. So that's one of my concerns, is just the fact that we're actually doing a rezoning in order to accomplish this.
Yes, I was going to comment. I'm comfortable with that motion, particularly in light of the easement situation. I think that is a unique condition that would make it difficult to build. On basically you have 65 feet left. Difficult to build a duplex. So I'm inclined to support this as a one-off without the same concern about creating a precedent.
Well, certainly if we did not recommend to the City Council that the ordinance be amended, and you do take away some of and put some of the information with respect to the easement situation, that does seem to me to make it more unique and less precedential. So,
if I could, Mr. Chair, I would like to add a finding to the initial motion. I would imagine we'd have to get an approval from our second on that.
We'll see.
I'll make it good. But I'd like to add a finding that this property has unique constraints for building a two-family structure caused by existing utility easements.
Can I make a friendly offer of an amendment on that finding as well? Just noting what you had mentioned with respect to the two properties to the east of it, that they are also zoned R1. So you do have two adjacent properties that are zoned R1.
Actually, that would be a good addition to the finding.
Is the seconder willing to accept that as amended?
Yes, I am.
Very good. So, the motion has been changed so that the findings now have, subject to plan and so forth, but also making note of the situation with respect to the easements and making note of the proximity to the lot of existing R1 zoning. Is there other discussion? Are we ready for the question? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this, subject to the findings as discussed and with the conditions as discussed. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So 2 nays. Did I catch 2 nays on that? Okay. The motion is adopted.
Mr. Chair, can I just recommend that this topic be added to our list on the ordinance revisions? And I would really note from page 3 on the staff report that staff had surveyed 15 cities, and only 3 of the 15 cities neglected to permit single-family housing within duplex or R2 zoning districts. And that seems to make us an outlier, and I'd like to at least look at that and what the impact has.
I think that's a good suggestion. We should consider this as part of the look we take to the ordinance, not necessarily that we're planning on changing the ordinance, but just it's a unique situation, and maybe the fact that, you know, we don't change the ordinance should speak for itself. So we'll add that to the list. Thank you. Okay, the next item of business is item 2011.003.11A, lot division for 6800 and 6804 Indian Hills Road. Carrie?
Thank you, Chair Grable, members of the commission. This property is located on the west side of the city in Indian Hills. It's on Arrowhead Lake. The lot currently exists as 3 lots, as shown on the screen. There is an existing house, 2 existing homes. The lot in the middle is vacant. This is the home at 6804. This is a somewhat recently built home at 6800. Some of you may recall there was a subdivision that was granted back in 2005 of the 6800 property. This is a look at that subdivision back then. There was an existing home on that lot. The proposal then was to tear that down and build 2 new homes. This was back in 2005. It was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. Went to the City Council. The City Council denied it, and the applicant sued the city over that decision and ended up prevailing. So the subdivision was granted, essentially. So the new home was built on that southern lot. The lot in the middle remains vacant today. What the applicant would like to do is take that middle lot and draw a lot line in between it. So you've got 3 existing lots that would become 2. Half of the property would go to the lot to the north and half to the south. The resulting lots far exceed our medians for the area. There are existing drainage and utility easements that are established along those 2 lot lines. The applicant would like to vacate those. That would be a separate action taken by the City Council. City engineer has reviewed the site and found that drainage and utility easements aren't really necessary, so he's not requiring them on that new established lot line. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the lot division, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report.
If I might, I vaguely remember this. So what originally happened is they wanted to divide this, essentially divide the 1 lot into 2, so you could have 3 houses on this, in this big area. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And now that's not the case, and they want to, it's got 2 houses, so they want to keep 2 houses.
Correct.
Other questions of staff?
Who owns the lot right now? Which side? Or who, does one of them own it?
It's my understanding that the two property owners are going to purchase the property in the middle and then do the lot division. So whether, I don't know how that's arranged, if they each pitched in half, I'm not sure, but they currently hold that middle lot.
Other questions of staff? Commissioner Carpenter?
Carrie, I'm not sure where this is taking anything, but I was a little confused when I looked at the table on the second page that provides square footage for the, what I understand to be the two proposed lots. And then comparing that to the surveys or sketch drawings, whatever they are, in the materials, it looks to me as if the lot areas are not correct, or something's not correct. But as I understand it, looking at the two proposed lots, it appears to be that the square footage for lot 6804 wouldn't be 58,000 square feet, but 83,258. And then for the other one, it wouldn't be 49,000, but 74,630. Am I reading that correctly, or am I confused?
The confusing part here, the staff report numbers are accurate. What you're seeing reflected on that survey is these lots were platted out into the middle of the lake. So all this area in here is lake.
That's lake.
But those calculations on the survey, they're taking that into account. But the true lot size is all the dry area above the ordinary high water mark of Arrowhead Lake.
Okay, well, that makes more sense.
Other questions for staff? Kerry, I have one. As I was reading through this, the thought occurred to me, we've talked about, you've got the median requirement, and there are lot size requirements for the city. Is there, and maybe this isn't the time for this discussion, but is there or should there be a maximum lot size within the city?
Well, I guess that would be another topic for our bucket list on the zoning ordinance. I don't know.
Are you aware that do any of the surrounding cities, to your knowledge, have maximum lot sizes? Is this just some wild thing that I came up with that we ought to just ignore?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any that have maximums.
All right. Maybe that's something for some later discussion, but it just popped into my mind as I was looking at it. Other questions of staff? And it does not appear that the proponents are here to, are the proponents here to discuss this? Are you a proponent? Is this your lot?
I am on 6,800.
Okay, would you care to, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
Just both our myself and my neighbor don't see ourselves having a house right in the middle. That's why we decided to.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there a motion, are there any discussion here at the commission about this? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the staff recommendation that the City Council approve the lot division of 6800 and 6804 Indian Hills Road, subject to findings that the resulting lots comply with all minimum lot standards, and subject to the condition that existing drainage and utility easements be vacated.
There is a motion. Is there a second? There is a second. Further discussion.
I just wanted to second it because I probably made a motion or seconded to split them up years ago. So it felt like it would be kind of closing the circle, but that's okay.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve this request, subject to the findings and the conditions in the staff recommendation. Is there further discussion?
I have one
Sure.
question about the condition with the existing drainage and utility easements being vacated. Are those the ones that are kind of parallel to the length of the lot or parallel to Indian Hills Road? Or are they all of them in their entirety? There is an easement across the front of the lot as well, I believe.
It would be the side lot lines. You're right, those ones up in front are not.
I will accept the friendly amendment to have it be just the side lot line easements vacated.
Will you accept that as a seconder? All right. Is there further discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. Request agenda item 2011-0311A is approved. All right, the next item of business, 2009-0004.10, zoning ordinance amendments. The first one is rooftop dining. Gary?
Thank you, Chair Grable, members of the commission. This is ordinance we've been looking at over the last couple of months. And based on the direction from the Planning Commission at the March 23rd meeting, we've revised the ordinance. And this is an ordinance that would allow rooftop dining as a conditionally permitted use in the PCD2 zoning district. Those districts include the Grandview district here just west of Highway 100, 50th and France area, and the Edina interchange area west of Highway 100 along 77th. The changes include that the definition has been expanded, the definition of rooftop dining. It would include wedding receptions, business receptions, catered events, and parties, as we talked about the last time. The parking requirements have been changed to now reflect outdoor dining and rooftop. So anything that exceeds 20% of the existing restaurant or the indoor restaurant would require additional parking spaces. A liquor license is now required, one of the conditions for the outside area. And the fencing requirement has been included per the building code. The current building code right now is a 42-inch fence, or guard as it's referred to in the building code, is required around the perimeter of a rooftop dining facility. The maximum opening within the fence is 4 inches. So we're simply referencing the building code as those standards tend to change from time to time. So with the ordinance that's before the commission tonight, again, rooftop dining would be a conditionally permitted use. Some of those conditions include that it would have to be accessory to an indoor restaurant in the same building. The outdoor dining may not have a kitchen facility or a bar on the roof. The parking standard now includes patio, outdoor patio seating, as well as rooftop. A 50-foot setback is required to R1 and R2 zoning districts. Hours of operation are limited from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and can be looked at on an individual basis depending on the circumstances. Amplified sound may not be audible from adjacent properties, and the property would need to be screened from R1 and R2 districts. Again, liquor license would be required and the fencing requirement. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the amendment before you.
Thank you. Discussion? Commissioner Forrest?
I'm just curious, do we have any hours of operation limits on other outdoor dining in the city?
We do not.
Carrie, refresh my recollection. We ban kitchen facilities and a bar on the rooftop, but we are expanding allowed uses to include various types of, where is it now? Catered events, wedding receptions, et cetera. It's right there. Is there a reason why a bar is not allowed up there? Is there a code issue, or?
That was the conclusion of the planning commission, that we didn't want to
Okay.
see those kind of activities up there, noise issues.
But we'd be allowing serving of alcohol up there, so they would just simply have to carry them up there as opposed to prepare them.
Correct.
And, for example, you could have a portable bar up there that wouldn't be up there permanently. That would be another possibility. Okay. And then skipping past that to the second, Section 2P, the language there talks about outdoor rooftop dining and outdoor patio or sidewalk dining areas or a combination of both, at least for me, creates some confusion. It almost looks like we're giving choices as to how to calculate the percentages. And I'm kind of wondering what would happen, for example, if you had outdoor patio or sidewalk dining at 19% and rooftop dining at 19%. You wouldn't necessarily hit the 20% threshold if they were each calculated separately. Wouldn't we have to be combining those to get those numbers?
We would, and I believe the language does say that.
Well, it seems to give a choice. It says outdoor rooftop dining and outdoor patio or sidewalk dining areas or a combination of both. I'm wondering if we'd be better if we refer to it as simply a combination of outdoor rooftop dining, outdoor patio, and sidewalk dining. If it, if the combined calculation is larger than 20%. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. I don't know if somebody else has a different reaction.
No,
I don't think
way
you are.
The way you're stating it, I believe, is clearer than as written.
Those are my only comments.
So what was your suggestion to change the language?
Well, let's see. I mean, number one, I guess what I'm raising for everybody, maybe a little bit of discussion about is whether we truly want to ban a bar on the roof. Kitchen facilities seem to me, maybe there are more code-related issues that might go with that. So I just raise that as an issue. I'm not sure how strongly I feel about that, given the fact that, for example, we have wedding receptions, other receptions, catered events, and parties up there. But then as to the language, actually, let me do this. Let me take a moment to wordsmith it, and then, or maybe somebody has beat me to the punch.
Are you talking about under P?
Yes.
Under P now.
I would just suggest you, at the beginning of the yellowed part, you just say a combination of outdoor rooftop dining and outdoor patio or sidewalk dining areas that are larger than 20% in area of the square
That's
footage of
fine.
the principal indoor restaurant. So you're just taking out everything from or through both
That works.
and adding the 3 words at the beginning. And I tend to agree, I'm sorry, I was already talking. I tend to agree about I think there should be some other language that allows a temporary setup on the roof. Otherwise, we're sort of saying you can do it, but no one will because it won't be practical.
Or why don't we just say a permanent bar?
Yeah.
Do we care whether it's permanent or not?
Apparently.
Do we remember who thought that was a good idea?
We could just delete the bar from the prohibitions and just leave it at kitchen facilities.
Was the concern due to noise because a bar is more concentrated gathering spot with more people and that it was more likely to carry?
That was the concern. I prefer, well, doesn't matter.
Sure.
I'm the chair. I have a question with respect to condition 5, adequately screened from existing R1 or R2 zoning district lots used for residential purposes. My question is, Carrie, do you know the condominium that is at the corner of 50th and France? Do you know what the zoning is for that lot?
That's PCD 2.
Okay. So that would not be covered by this condition?
Correct.
Okay. And then, if we approved this, and this would be a conditional use to PCD 2, so what would be the process if a restaurant wanted to do this? What would they have to do?
They would make application for conditional use permit, submitted 30 days prior to a planning commission meeting. There would be a public hearing at planning commission and city council.
And if they met all these conditions, our discretion is pretty much limited, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Commissioner Staunton?
Carrie, I just want to make sure I understand now how the parking would work. So subsection 850.08 subdivision 1P currently provides that you have to provide spaces equal in number to 1/3 the maximum indoor seating capacity plus one space for each employee on a major shift is what's required. And we're saying if your outdoor patio, if a combination of your outdoor patio and rooftop area exceeds 20% of that, then you have to provide additional spaces. So then do you take that, would the way we calculate it be that you would then take all of that seating and it'd be 1/3 of that seating that you'd have to provide an additional parking?
Yes.
Okay. Have we checked to see whether our 20% idea would tip anybody currently operating an outdoor patio into needing more parking?
We have. We would not be making any outdoor dining facilities non-conforming,
Okay.
essentially.
How might that parking be, assuming we did this, how might that parking be accomplished? Do you have any thoughts about what somebody might do to do that?
There may be a circumstance where a property would have parking in excess of what's required, so they can provide it within existing. As an example, in the 50th and France area, in all likelihood, they would not be able to obtain a conditional use permit. They wouldn't be able to meet that parking regulation.
Unless they rented space some other place or something like that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Forrest?
I guess, based on our previous discussion, I'd like to see it changed to a permanent beverage bar, not being allowed on the rooftop versus a bar. It could be a dessert bar, salad bar, who knows what kind of bar it is. But, so I would say permanent beverage bar, and then if we do decide it's appropriate, then further state temporary beverage and food stations may be allowed at private parties and receptions, if that's what we want.
Other discussion? Oh, yes.
Given the change that we made to the highlighted part in section 2, letter P, about the combination of outdoor rooftop dining and outdoor patio dining, do we also need to change the last line from what it currently says about additional parking spaces to rooftop and patio seating capacity, so it's the total capacity, not just one or the other?
Good catch.
I also have another question.
Okay.
In part 5 of subdivision 6, the note about adequately screening, does that condition require that someone might have to exceed the given building code standard that was mentioned earlier, if that's what's appropriate for the given area?
I believe that would be on a case-by-case basis. You could make that determination if it's appropriately screened or not.
Commissioner Forrest?
So procedurally, that would come up when the conditional use permit is granted, that's one of the things we would look at, is
Correct.
the screening appropriate? Okay.
Commissioner Staunton, then Commissioner Schroeder.
Carrie, I just want to make sure I understand the parking thing before we do this. In the 50th and France area, the way we currently have that configured, do the existing properties have a certain number of spaces within the public parking? And how is that calculated if they do?
Yeah, I may have misspoken on that, on saying that in all likelihood they wouldn't be able to do the outdoor dining. You're allowed square footage up to 100% of your lot size. And if you provide a use up to that maximum, you can utilize the public parking ramps to provide your parking. If you're beyond a FAR of 1, then you need to provide your own parking in addition. The additional space is required over 1. So if it would be on a case-by-case basis up there as to whether they would have adequate parking. I believe, given the Barrio site where how this has all started, I believe they would have, they haven't maximized their site. They're under the 1.0 FAR. So in all likelihood, they could do rooftop dining there and still be able to utilize the ramp.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schroeder, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't want to go back too far, but do we actually define what constitutes rooftop dining anywhere? The Pinstripes, for instance, has outdoor dining that's kind of on a balcony. I don't know if you consider it to be the rooftop because it's not the top of the building. I don't know, maybe it's splitting hairs, but people would be creating balconies to avoid being on the roof. And we haven't really addressed that. It's not a patio, it's not a sidewalk.
I believe it's covered in our definition of rooftop dining, where we say outdoor dining on a rooftop that's accessory to an indoor restaurant in the same building. So I think you could say that Pinstripes, that outdoor dining isn't on the rooftop.
So they're not regulated?
Correct.
Commissioner Platter?
I don't think you'd want to stay silent on that issue then, would you? I think you'd want to put something in there, either to define that or something.
I'm kind of looking at this and saying, we're splitting a lot of hairs. Either you're dining indoors or you're dining outdoors. I don't know why we care whether it's a sidewalk, a patio, a balcony, or rooftop. It all has the same implications on parking. It all could potentially have the same impacts on neighbors. Why are we trying to get so definitive, other than the fact that one restaurant talked about this 6 or 8 months ago and never did anything about it?
The answer to that question is that we didn't think of it. In case you were wondering.
Commissioner Forrest?
If you want to split hairs, we could also ask, what are we talking about with dining areas? I mean, reception gathering spot, you could have 5 times as many people or more and a lot more noise if we allow receptions and parties and things. So if we want to limit it to dining, it's dining. Otherwise, I'm not sure.
I think we had, when we started out on this, we talked a little bit about the patio dining, in that it's not having a significant impact. They're generally small in size, and we thought we would continue to allow that as a permitted use, at least up to the minimum of the 20%, but that the rooftop dining had a little more impact, especially on adjacent properties. So I think that's where we kind of started toward, that it seemed to be an appropriate use, but we wanted some regulation on it, that a conditional use permit would be appropriate for that type of a use, where the outdoor patio dining would continue to be a permitted use.
So there has been a distinction made between patio and rooftop.
I think so.
Yes, Commissioner Watts.
Are patios taken into account in floor area ratio calculations? Or, I'm sorry, not patios, balconies.
They're not.
Other questions, discussion? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Potts.
if I could make a statement preceding a motion, I think we're tiptoeing into this. This is speculation, but just in terms of financial feasibility of doing, of all the infrastructure you need to put in to meet building code and get people up and down from a rooftop dining area, to limit that to 20%, to put a cap on that before adding additional requirements to meet parking codes, or parking requirements. I don't think we're putting ourselves at risk of having somebody do that to 19% to avoid that, but rather to look for a way to build balconies and other things if they're trying to expand their service area and generate more revenue. So having said that, I guess I'd move that with the small language changes we've made to this, that we accept the staff rewrite.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to approve this, to pass it on to the council with the language changes. Now, help me with the language changes. I think in Section 1, Subdivision 850.03, we would insert in the third line, it would read, kitchen facilities or a permanent beverage bar on the rooftop. And then did you want to add additional language?
I'm not sure if we as a group want to add additional language. I'm just wondering if we want to say the temporary beverage and food stations may be allowed during private parties of some type, but maybe that's just too expandable to semi-permanent. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if we, it seems to me if we add the language permanent beverage to modify bar, we've taken care of that. Okay. And then in subdivision, in Section 2, in the last line, the or between rooftop and patio is changed to an and. And then I'm not sure what the other changes were in that section. Commissioner Fisher?
I think what we talked about is before, just looking at the yellow area, before the word outdoor, just adding a combination of, and then in the second line there, after the word areas, delete or a combination of both. And as long as I have the mic here, on that rooftop dining under Section 1 up above, we need to spell dining correctly.
Dining? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, did we catch all the language changes? As long as we're doing that in under 6B, under 1, in the last line there, lots, I think should be lot of an existing R1 or R2 zoning district lot. Are we ready for the question? Commissioner Staunton?
Sorry, I'm just when we think we're almost there. All right, so this parking thing. So let's say that the barrio, for instance, has additional space, and let's say they can add another, let's say, 20% more space without reaching the 1.0 FAR. do they have to go get additional parking spaces, or can they use the parking spaces that they already have in the ramp?
They could use the parking spaces that they're allotted as their fair share within the area.
So when we say that they must provide additional parking spaces equal to 1/3 the maximum outdoor, et cetera, one of the ways they could provide that is for instance, in the 50th and France area, if they're one of the properties that already has credits for additional ones that they're not using.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You ready for the question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. And the next item under zoning ordinance amendments is Planning Commission meeting dates. The Zoning Board of Appeals discussion item. Carrie?
Okay, as was mentioned earlier, well, it looks like it is a done deal now that the Krummenacher is now law, and so we'll be back in business soon. Right. So it's going to be soon. It could be as early as our next meeting on June 1st. We may, I would anticipate we're going to have a run on people applying once that's signed. We have several people waiting. So with that, the City Council at their last meeting, they did adopt the ordinance that establishes the Planning Commission as the Zoning Board of Appeals. So it's now us. Given that, we will, as we've talked about, need to start meeting twice a month. So we're asked to have this discussion this evening as far as how we'd like to move forward and what dates those would be. As we talked about at the work session with the City Council back on March 15th, they're looking to try to streamline the process a little quicker. And rather than, after the Planning Commission takes action on an item, rather than bringing it to the council and having them set a public hearing, they've asked that staff set the hearing both for Planning Commission and the City Council when those public hearings would be held, and just sending out one notice rather than sending out two like we currently do. So that said, staff suggests this evening that the Planning Commission consider meeting the first and third Wednesdays of each month. If we went to that, if we did that, say we met the first Wednesday of each month, that would flow to the next available City Council meeting, which would be their second Tuesday. It would essentially flow in quicker to their next available meeting. There would be a 2-week delay rather than currently it's a 3-week delay. So with that, I'll just open it up for discussion as to how we'd like to move forward. Oh, and another thing that we would need to talk about is, do we want to continue meeting at 5:30, similar to what we did with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and consider the residential type variances at that meeting, and then have the more formal televised 7 o'clock meeting for larger development proposals? So I throw that out there for discussion also.
Mr. Platter?
I just had a comment on the meeting twice a month. I'd understood when we talked about that before, when we rolled in the ZBA, that we'd actually be rolling it into our regular meeting, so there'd be one meeting a month then to capture both of them. Was I mistaken in how I understood that?
I don't know that you were mistaken, but I understood it to be 2 different meetings per month as opposed to one meeting with 2 agendas, which I think is what you suggested. Anybody else?
Chair Grable, I think every time we talked about it, at least every time I was coherent and listening to the discussion, we really talked about both options, and it was only sort of toward the end that I think we gravitated that it probably makes sense to go to the 2 meetings. And I think that came out of the work session with the council, about that streamlined process, setting public hearings, much as Carrie has just talked about.
Commissioner Fisher?
I guess, speaking to it's really the two issues to talk about. If staff believes it's the first and third Wednesday, I think that could work fine. It's something that you just kind of, right now it seems a little more random. You can't just say it's the X Wednesday, which makes it a little tougher when you're just trying to think without a calendar in front of you, am I going to have a conflict? So that part I think is fine. I would suggest that potentially we have like a 3-month reprieve from our meeting attendance guidelines, because I can say just personally looking out my next 3 months, between work schedule and family things that I've intentionally scheduled around Planning Commission, now I would have at least 3 conflicts. And so I think we have to get through a period of time here until we can have more control over our calendars. So I'm fine with the first and third Wednesday if that's what staff feels is the best schedule, working with the council. As to the 5:30 meetings versus doing it all at 7 o'clock, I guess I could work with that. The only question I have is, how do you really predict? I'm thinking more of the chair here. How do you really control that? I mean, if you have, or does staff help control that by the number of variance requests you're going to allow on that 5:30 agenda? So we're neither running into our 7 o'clock meeting nor having, an hour gap where we're sitting there wondering, do we leave, do we stay, what do we do?
Carrie, then Commissioner Staunton.
Yeah, 5 is the typical maximum number of applications that we would accept for the zoning board. We could continue that practice. I would expect that we would have some meetings, even when we have 5, that we're going to run up against the 7 o'clock. So we may want to decide beforehand how we want to handle that. Do we continue it to after the 7 o'clock meeting, or do you just make that part of the agenda? Continue right on with that. Something worth discussing.
Well, I think the concern there is that the residential zoning variance requests not be televised. Is that right? So if we started at 5:30, we'd have 5 residential zoning requests, and then at 7 o'clock or whenever we were done with the residential requests, then we would begin televising the meeting. It seems to me if we ran over, the meeting starts at 5:30. It's called to order at 5:30. We handle the residential zoning requests, and then whatever time we are done with those, then we begin televising the meeting. Does that make sense? Commissioner Staunton?
A couple of thoughts. One, I don't understand why we're going to treat the residential zoning requests differently in terms of televising. I mean, there seems to be a lot of, witness the paper this morning, a lot of consternation about whether we're on television or not. I think it's not that big a deal. I mean, we all get used to it. People, it allows people to see what's going on, and I think we ought to have as much of it televised as possible, and I don't think it ought to be distinguished based on whether it's residential or not. And then secondly, what I would recommend is we just do 2 meetings a month, starting at 7 o'clock. We're going to have, I think staff will get a handle on what the agenda is between variances, conditional use permits, final development plans, PUD applications, et cetera. And, there might be some months where after checking with the chairs, staff can notify the commissioners we don't have a meeting the first meeting of the month because we can fit it all into the second meeting. Or we may have to kind of take things in different order and mix them around. Or you're going to have a variance that's combined with a conditional use permit and a final development approval. So why don't we just have the maximum flexibility, deal with these things as they come up. Variances are just one of the things that we consider, and I'd recommend we just do the 2 meetings and televise as much of it as we possibly can.
Commissioner Fisher?
I just like Commissioner Staunton's idea. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it makes it a lot less trying to juggle schedules and make sure things align. And, I mean, it is what it is. It starts at 7, ends when it's done. 2 meetings a month. It's very easy for people to understand and to know. And I agree that we probably shouldn't treat it differently just because it's a residential request versus a commercial in terms of the television.
Carrie?
Yeah, staff would agree also. One thing you might want to consider is a 6:30 start. I would throw that out there for discussion. 6 o'clock start, 6:30. We could go 7. I would anticipate here in the first few months, we're going to see a lot of variances, and something to consider. I guess I just throw that out there for your consideration.
Okay.
Commissioner
Staunton?
I guess I'd just say that 7 has kind of been our typical time, and I mean, maybe it would work at 6:30, but I know everybody's got different challenges with whether it's getting back from work or getting your kids where they need to go, and for attendees as well. And so kind of on the if it ain't broke, don't fix it school, I'd be inclined to keep it at 7 unless there's a real groundswell to move it earlier.
Is there a groundswell to move it earlier?
7.
Commissioner Forrest?
7.
Sounds like the groundswell is to keep it at 7.
Okay.
Well, and currently we have published meeting times in our About Town and other things that say 7 o'clock, so if we find we need to move it half hour earlier, we can do that in the future.
So if I can, what I'm hearing from the commission, and tell me if I'm hearing it incorrectly, is that we'd have 2 meetings a month, first and third Wednesdays. We'd begin at 7 o'clock. We'd handle residential variances just like any other issue that comes before the commission. Those issues would be televised. Is that what I'm hearing? Do we need a motion on that? Commissioner Staunton?
Can I just add one other thing? And Commissioner Fisher raised this, and I think it's a good point. And I know, our 9th commissioner, who is not here, plans very carefully around her times out of town as well. I mean, if we do this, we're just kind of setting our ground rules for ourselves. This doesn't go to the council, does it?
I wouldn't think so, no.
Okay.
This is right.
But I do think we have to have some kind of discussion about the attendance policy and how it would affect us, and the fact that suddenly we're doing 2 meetings a month, and I would hate for, whether it's Mike's point about, at least a 3-month grace period when people can get, or 4 months. People's calendars are probably already booked for the summer, and I would hate for us to stumble into a situation where somehow people are violating the attendance policy based on these meetings. And I don't know what the solution to that is, other than, I don't think there's any other commission that meets more than once a month as a regular matter. So maybe the council wants to do something different if we're meeting twice a month.
Well, I've thought about this. The present attendance requirements are that you meet 75%, you attend 75% of the meetings. So if we meet twice a month, we've got more meetings, so the 75% increases. Actually, the 25% that you can miss increases too. So the issue I have with that is 3 in a row, and it would be very easy. You go out of town for a couple of weeks on vacation, you could miss 2 meetings, and then if you're sick, you happen to catch the flu, you could miss the third and you'd be out. And I think, I've had some discussion with some of the members of the city council, not to anything definitive, but it seems to me we could request council to take a look at that 3 meetings in a row requirement and maybe make it 4 as opposed to 3. And that would, I would think, take care of the issue that all of us would have with that, because they don't want to willy-nilly throw us under the bus, actually.
Mr. Chair, it wouldn't help me. I have a commitment between now and the end of July on the first and third Wednesday of every month.
Well, I'm going to get to that point in just a second here. Then, because this is a major change, I like Commissioner Fisher's idea that we get a 3-month moratorium. You know, let's get it, since we're going to have variance requests, let's go ahead and get started with that. But in order to allow everyone to adjust their schedules, particularly over the summer, let's get some relief from the attendance during the summer months over the next 3 months anyway, and maybe begin in September or October with the formal attendance requirement, since we are making a major change to our work schedule here. Commissioner Staunton?
Would it work with the second and fourth Wednesdays? Or does that cause a problem?
If we did it the second and fourth, there would be 3 weeks in between when the planning commission meets and the next available city council.
You could just have like a second city council meeting in a month, or, well, it'd be 3 weeks in between each one, wouldn't it?
It would. It'd be the same practice as we have now.
So why don't we, I mean, if we've got a commissioner who's going to miss, I mean, maybe there's other people who would have a problem with the second and the fourth, but if we're all okay with the second and the fourth, we're not?
That's essentially what we've been doing the last year with our extra meetings, correct? So in theory, we've already had those kind of blocked out, though we're not committed to. But it seems like that would be a much more natural progression if that works with all the other city meetings.
Yeah, it's not streamlining. Applications aren't moving quicker to the city council. In a sense, they could continue to set the public hearing if they wanted to. It's that extra week.
Oh, because
the planning
with the
commission
first and
meets-
third, it'd be,
Right. The planning commission would meet the Wednesday, and council packets would need to be completed that same week. So putting minutes together and any changes to the plan really couldn't be done. But if we did the first and third, we would have the rest of that week and the following week to put together the packet for the council in order to.
so like on the first Wednesday would then be on the third Tuesday.
Right.
Commissioner Fisher?
Might I suggest sort of a transition to, I mean, obviously, we could just do it the first and third and just wish Commissioner Schroeder the best for the next few months and see him later. But the other thing we could do is say, you know, here's our meeting schedule for the next 2 months. But our ultimate longer-term goal is it's going to be the first and third. I mean, I think the council's goal is a good one to really streamline the process, and we'll get there. But just have this transition where you're starting to hear the variances, we're getting our work done, but we'll get to that in a few months.
Yeah. And we won't have any meetings in May.
Correct.
The next available is June 1st.
Yeah, I would schedule meetings in June 1st.
Could we use Labor Day as the end of the transition period, say, get us through summer?
Yeah, well, that's already, your next meeting is June 1st, so you won't have any meetings in May, as it stands now.
And June 1st is the first, must be the first Wednesday.
It is.
Yeah. So you'd miss that meeting anyway, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay. I wish something.
I'll make a motion that we change our work schedule to be the second and fourth, well, to be the first and third Wednesdays, beginning in September of 2011, and that from now until September of 2011, we do the second and fourth Wednesdays. And furthermore, that we petition the council for a modification of the 3-in-a-row rule to expand it to at least 4 in a row in recognition of our 2 meetings a month as a regular schedule.
And what about your suggestion that we have during this, until September, there's no attendance requirement?
I'd be happy to add that as part of the petition to the council, that there be a 3-month grace period on that.
Commissioner Forrest?
The calendar you received in our packets, is that our current calendar?
I think that's the current calendar.
Because it isn't all first, I mean, it isn't all second and fourth, like in August, it's second and fifth. So maybe we should just say we stick with the existing calendar until we switch over.
That actually might make a lot of sense, because we have those, I mean, even though it wasn't always set that we would meet that, typically that second Wednesday, at least it was sort of a pattern we were somewhat accustomed to.
Because what we have in front of us has been published.
Right.
That's a good point.
So then the suggestion is that for the months, there's no meeting in May? Right. So for the months of June, July, and August, we keep the schedule as posted in the current city calendar. We begin in September to meet the second and fourth Wednesdays. We begin the meetings at 7 o'clock, televised with whatever happens to be on the agenda. We petition the council for modification of the 3 in a row to at least 4 in a row, and that given the change that the extra meetings are now mandatory, that we have no formal attendance requirement until we commence that in September of 2011.
Would you need to include that if you're just going to stay on the normal schedule for the summer?
Well, we're adding the meetings that are presently on the calendar. The extra meetings that are presently on the calendar are times that we have set out for the zoning ordinance subcommittee. So those are not
So the planning,
official
the work
meetings.
sessions become official meetings?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think you've accurately summarized my motion.
Second.
Thank you. And it was seconded, so. Further discussion.
Just to clarify, we are not meeting in May, even with this revised motion?
There's no business for the...
Correct, yeah,
Correct.
there would
Okay.
be no business for May 11th.
Good.
Well, the ordinance hasn't passed yet, or hadn't been adopted. Right. All right. Are we ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. All right. Okay. Commissioner Staunton, could you give us an update, please, on the work of the small area study?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have had the first 2 meetings of the Grandview District Small Area Plan process. We did the kickoff meeting on April 14th, and we had a good group of folks turn out, a combination of people who had participated in the visioning process last year, as well as a number of new people. And then we had a second meeting at the Senior Center on April 21st. And at that meeting, we established a steering committee made up of the people who have come out and volunteered to participate in this process. And the steering committee decided to appoint an executive committee of 8 people that is going to start meeting and working on teeing up proposals for the steering committee as the process moves forward. Just to remind folks who may not have heard this before, this is the beginning of an approximately 1-year process to develop a small area plan for the Grandview District, building off of the 7 guiding principles that the City Council approved in December. And our goal is to, with the assistance of some Metropolitan Council grant resources, retain appropriate consultants and draft a development framework and an implementation plan as part of that small area plan. And we're hoping that by October we're ready to bring it to some community meetings and to the school district and the City Council for review and comment and some tinkering. So that's the status, and I might add that Commissioner Fisher and Commissioner Schroeder have kind of co-chaired this along with me, and Commissioner Potts and Commissioner Platter have been participating. Commissioner Platter participated as a representative of the Energy and Environment Commission in the first phase of this process, and will continue to do so in the second phase, even though he's now with us on the Planning Commission. And Commissioner Potts is also participating in the process. So I thank all of those folks for their work and the people who have come out and so enthusiastically participated in the process.
Could I just add that everyone's welcome? Don't feel like, you know, there was special representation only. I mean, as citizens of Edina, we can all be out there involved if you're interested.
Good, thank you. The next item on the agenda is community comment. Looking out into the room, I see no residents who wish to share new ideas or concerns. So unless anyone here on the commission wants to take advantage of the community comment section, we'll move on. Does anyone here wish to add anything? All right. Intergovernmental business, you received the council connection in your packet. Any other intergovernmental issues to bring to the fore? All right. Our next meeting date is the Planning Commission meeting on June 1st, 2011. And with that, unless there's any, is there any other business to come before the commission? We will therefore entertain a motion to adjourn. I don't know what happened. Where's it go now?
Who's our newest?
So moved.
It's been moved to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
The new people always.